So we're running a little bit late, so we're just going to rush along to the next one. So I can't tell you any of my funny stories. But I'm really excited to introduce you to Colin Robertson. So Colin's our own local blue Aussie Anzac digger. He's a veteran of World War II. Colin enlisted in the army at just, were you 18? I thought you were younger than that. How old were you when you enlisted in the army?
18.
I thought you were a bit cheekier than that, but anyway. Serving in some of the most intense campaigns in the Pacific, including Bougainville and the infamous Battle of Morton. His extraordinary experiences from jungle warfare to Japanese POW roundups are a testament to resilience and courage of mateship. Now at 99 and a half, Cole remains an inspiration, staying active, sharing his remarkable stories and marching proudly on Anzac Day with his family. We're honoured to welcome you as our guest speaker, offering a first-hand account. Cole's also a first leader, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So Cole doesn't really enjoy talking about the war days, and we had a beautiful conversation back just before all the lockdown started, and he talked about some of the war days there, and he's been through a lot, so he prefers to reflect on all the good things that are in his life now and his family. So Cole's going to talk to us about his family. He's a very interesting man, so if you ever get a chance, have a really good chat with him. We're excited about your 100th birthday celebrations, but in the meantime, I'd love you to come and have a chat about whatever you feel like.
You'll have to excuse me this morning, I've got a frog in the throat. I'd like first of all to tell you about my family at war, and not only in the Second World War, the previous wars and the wars that came afterwards. My father's brother, my uncle, he fought in the Boer War. He was wounded in the Boer War, evacuated back to Australia. He didn't have enough of that, so he enlisted again in the First World War, where he was gassed. He suffered with that all his life. Then my eldest brother, he was in the Light Horse prior to the Second World War. I don't know for how long, but anyway, when the Second World War started, they disbanded the Light Horse and they went into the armoured brigade. He never went overseas, he was in Australia. I had another brother that fought went to Egypt, he fought there and in Syria. He came back to Australia and he was on the Dakota Trail in New Guinea. Another brother, he was sent to, he went to enlisted, he went to New Guinea and he fought in New Guinea. Another brother of mine, one just a little bit older than me, he was in the 6th Division, he fought in New Guinea. Now these three were all up there in New Guinea at the same time in the conflict, and I was on Bougainville. So 4 of us out of our family were overseas at the one time. It must have been a terrible time for my mother. My sister, who was older than me, she was in the Air Force. So actually there were 6 of us in the forces during the war out of 11. There was 11 children, 9 boys and 2 girls in our family, so a fair proportion. After that war finished, the Vietnam War came. Other wars came along. I had 2 nephews that fought in Malaya and in Timor. Then I had my son, Robert, and one of my nephews, they fought in Vietnam. So going overall, we've covered the wars from the Boer War to the Vietnam War. So that was that bit of it. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit about me. That was our family at war. I joined the army when I was 18, and I was sent to Queensland to do my basic training at Warwick, which I did. I was trained as a signaller up in Warwick, and that took I was at the School of Signals for a month, so I was there for 4 months. Then we were sent to Sydney. Now, what happened in those days, because they couldn't send you overseas until you were 19, and we were only 18, and there was a terrible lot of us at that age. So we were all sent back to Sydney to supposedly, I suppose, to look after Sydney during the war. Well, I don't know what we were going to do. But, so my adventures in Sydney, when we arrived in Sydney, the wharfies were on strike. Now, this happened quite frequently during the war, that the wharfies would go on strike and they wouldn't load the boats to send the ammunition, other supplies to the islands. The war in New Guinea was at the height at that particular time with all the conflict going on there. And so us being just new soldiers, we were sent down to the wharves in Sydney to load the boats and with the ammunition and the other supplies to go. We worked on Walsh Bay Harbour. In those days it was quite an active port there, and at the Piedmont Wharf. Now the Piedmont Wharf was a big concrete wharf, and that was where all the ammunition was loaded onto the boats to go to the island. I worked on that wharf with it, and then that Pier 13 is exactly where the Star Casino is these days. The wharf's not there anymore, it's just Star Casino was built on that area. So I was there. Now, moving a bit further along, after we finished there, a bit later on, the Australian government was making a film in Sydney, and it was called The Rats of Tobruk. It was honouring the fellas that were been in Tobruk. Chips Rafferty was the leading actor in those days, and he was a big noted thing. So we were all used as the extras in that. So we're running around the beaches on around Cronulla dressed as Germans, some of us, and some of us dressed as Australians. That's where some of the scenes were taken. Other scenes were taken out the back of Campbelltown, which was all just paddocks in those days. Out the back of Campbelltown, where it is now, it's all just all houses out there, and they set up a village out there resembling Tobruk. Now, I don't know whether there's ever seen pictures made or not, but they don't build buildings, right? They just put up a front. So Tobruk, we were walking around the village of Tobruk, and that's all we had, hoardings both sides. But when it comes out in the picture, it looks like it's the whole village, but it's not really. So it sort of killed me with pictures forever. Moving on a little bit further, we went back to, that was all finished, and we went back to camp again. And then on the 6th of August, 1944, we were still in Sydney. We hadn't turned 19 by then, so we were still 18. And the Japanese broke out of the Cowra prisoner war camp. Now, I don't know whether you know where Cowra is. It's in the southwest of New South Wales. We were sent out there pretty promptly to assist with the roundup of the prisoners and take to look after the compounds and guard the compounds. Some of the fellas, they went and they were rounding up some of the prisoners, and my position there was in one of those guards towers. If you've ever been out to the Cowra prisoner war camp there, it's a museum these days. They've got a replica of that tower. Well, that was where I was. I spent 4 hours in there and 4 hours out. So it was a 4-hour shift. While I was there, I turned 19. Anyway, after we'd moved the prisoners from there down to a further compound at Hay, we were sent back to Sydney again. Those of us that had turned 19, we were sent north to the Jungle Warfare School at Canonga, which is situated just behind the Gold Coast. It's probably the hardest jungle warfare school in the world, always been renowned for it, and I think it's still in use today. Chris will be able to tell you that. I think he was
I did.
yeah.
It was horrible.
It was a horrible course, but it was under battle conditions as we would fight in the jungle. From there, after we'd finished the 28-day course there, we were sent out then as reinforcements to different battalions that were going overseas. I was sent to the 31st, 51st Battalion as a signaller, and a few days after I got there, we were loaded onto a boat in Sydney, in Brisbane, in the Brisbane River, and we sailed to Bougainville. So we went to Bougainville. That was in 1944. When we got there, we took over from the Americans. They had a base there. We took over from the Americans, and the brigade that I was in now, a brigade consists of 3 battalions. So I was in the 31st, 51st, 57, 58 was the other battalion, and the 8th battalion was the other one. We were allocated to the northern sector of Bougainville and also the centre sector, where there was a track went across to across the other side of the island. When we took over from the Americans, we started moving north, and because there was no tracks or roads or anything like that, of course, in those days, we were moved by barge. So we did a lot of beach landings from one spot to the next spot. If there was nobody there, then we moved on to the next spot and did a beach landing there. And it consisted, and when we got ashore, it was mainly consisted of patrols, and with patrol, they were mainly in section groups where you had 8 or 9 men in a section, and they would patrol out along the tracks that were there, and to see whether there's any Japanese there or not. Sometimes there was, sometimes there wasn't, and of course then we had the whole company would be coming along behind you, and there was approximately 100 men in the company in those days. Anyway, moving on from there, the war finished. And they called for volunteers for the occupation forces. And that was, the war finished on the 15th of August in 1945. A few days after the war finished, they called for volunteers for the occupation forces, and we thought we'd be all going to Japan. So, but in those days, the older men and the men that have been in the army for a long time, those with families and that, they were sent home to Australia almost immediately. They didn't leave, but because we were all so young, we didn't. We were the last ones to be moved back to Australia. So I was put on a boat called the River Vertigan, and there was another boat went with us, the River Canal, and the Diamantina was a sloop. That Diamantina, you've probably seen a lot of it. It's now a museum on the south bank in Brisbane River. Anyway, that was formed up as a task force, and we went to Nauru, where we took surrender at Nauru, loaded the Japanese on foot, and also Ocean Isle. Took the Japanese off there, took them back down to Ravel in New Britain, and then we went, because we couldn't put them all on those 2 boats, we went back again to get another load. And when I went back with them, myself and 29 other fellows were taken off the boat, and we were put ashore as a garrison. Now, we thought we'd only be there for a few weeks or something like that when the boat came back to pick us up. But it never come back, did it? I finished up on Nauru for 9 months. It wasn't until the end of April 1946 when they came back and picked us up and took us off there. But they flew us out on cattle leaders back to Rabaul. I was in Rabaul at the prisoner of war camps there because there's still Japanese there getting repatriated back to Japan. I was in Rabaul for a couple of weeks and then I caught a boat then back to Australia. And the boat was the HMAS Manila. It was a boat, a passenger boat that used to run along the coast in the days before they had railways right up the coast. And there was, of course, no aeroplanes much in those days, no passenger planes. That's how they had all these boats used to go up and down. It was a fair-sized boat anyway, but it was a comfortable journey. We were brought back from Rabaul to Sydney. Then they put me on a train, and because I had enlisted in Victoria, and I was taken back to where I enlisted, put me in the camp there, and then they discharged me. So I was discharged on the 30th of November 1946, 15 months after the war finished. So anyway, that's my story.
To his home, and his mum had no idea whether he was still alive or not.
Because there's no telephones, nothing much like in those days. There's no way of notifying your family that you're coming home or when you were going to come home or whatever. They had no idea. When I got to my mother's house, I knocked on the door, and because I had younger brothers, I'd been away for 4 years and they hadn't seen me. My youngest brother, he was only 8 when I went away. He was 12 when I came home. And he didn't know me. And so he opened the door and he said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm your brother, Colin." You know, he said, "Oh, he's away in the islands." He said, This incident is a big year for me because it's my 100th year.
Can I just I don't want to embarrass Col, and I don't want to create an emotional scene here, but just about these numbers. 180 Australians took part in the Battle of Portland Plantation, 23 killed, 107 maimed. Just think about that. Thank you, Col.
Sorry.
So when I had my conversation with Colin back in 2020, it was one of the very first times he'd ever spoken about what had happened and how many of his friends had gone killed.
I'm sorry about that.
It's okay, Colin.
It upsets me every time I talk about it.
Yeah. We fully understand that. Laurie, so to end today, we've got Laurie coming up to talk about Woopi in the war days. So we can go a bit longer. I know a few people have to leave right on the dot, but we can keep going. Has anybody got anything they wanted to talk about before they've left?
Apologies, I loved it, but we've got to actually make a move.
Oh, what a shame. Okay.
Very, very hard act to follow, but I'll just give you a little bit of brief background from my experiences with Woolgoolga. I was born and grew up here. My father had a banana plantation. My mother was a teacher. I had 4 sisters, so we were known far and wide as the Robinson girls. When war broke out, Dad and a group of his mates caught the train to Sydney to enlist. They were all accepted into the army. Dad was rejected on his eyesight. He'd been thrown from a horse and had damaged optic nerves. So he actually thought he could feel them, because when he was rejected, he floated around and then got to the end of another line, and by the time he got to the front of it, he had learned the eye chart off by heart. they were up to that, switched it again, and so he was out. So Mum got a telegram to say, been rejected, coming home, and she burst into tears down the main street. So, luckily for me, he was rejected, or I'd have never been born. He'd have been off in the Middle East somewhere. So, fear of the Japanese invasion was very real in this area and up and down the coast. There was surveillance points on our headland and everywhere else. The banana plantations were all fired, wired, so that they could be set fire to, because if the Japanese had landed, it would be taking away a food source, and the whole area was prepared for evacuation. There were very strict blackout rules. Everybody had to have blackout blinds on their windows. Travel at night was very restricted, essential services only, and even then they had to have dimmed lights so that there was no way for the Japanese to be able to pinpoint different areas. So, to save as much as possible for the war effort, coupons were introduced. So you had coupons for tea, sugar, and I don't think people drank coffee much in those days, but tea, sugar, petrol, clothing, butter. These became a bit of a trading thing. My grandfather, who didn't have a sweet tooth, loved his tea, so he would happily trade his tea and his sugar coupons to get more tea coupons. So travel was very difficult with so little petrol available. Even the royal family were restricted by coupons. When Princess Elizabeth was married in 1947, there was an appeal sent out for people to send clothing coupons in to allow her to have her wedding dress made.
Wow.
Most things, including toys, clothes, household items, games, were homemade. Although my sister did have a doll that was given to her. It was quite a large doll, about that size, all rag, body and arms and so on, but it had a steel head. It wasn't particularly pretty as I remember it, but it was very much loved. And not only was it a much loved doll, it was also a weapon. She would hold it by one leg and swing. It was appropriately called it Steely. It was always known as Steely. And my goodness, you didn't want to collide with Steely's head on it. Dad put all his energy and long hours into helping out by running plantations for his mates who were overseas. One night when he was packing by the Tilly light up the plantation, he got an unexpected visit from some military police. As he walked backwards and forwards in front of the light, from the bananas to the cases, they picked up, the headland surveillance picked up the flashes of light and thought that he was signalling the Japanese. Mum, who was a wonderful letter writer, wrote to many of Dad's mates overseas, bringing them news from home, which was really, really important for them. Among the mates who enlisted were Dad's best friend Alf Parbury and his brother Reg. They lived on the headland and were very fit and involved with sport in Wollongong. Alf was surf club captain, and both Alf and Reg were excellent boxers. Their father actually was the Australian amateur boxing champion, undefeated for 5 years. Before war broke out, Alf had fallen in love with Frances Hale, a young teacher who lived at the Seaview Hotel for 3 years while she was teaching at Wollongong Primary School. In 1942, when Alf and his mates were home on 10 days leave, Alf and Fran decided to get married in the tiny Wollongong Methodist Church. When Fran asked Alf about sending out invitations, Alf said, "Everyone in Woopi is a friend, so just put up a notice in Billy Rich's shop window and invite them all." So it was no wonder that the little timber Methodist church was absolutely overflowing. The Wollongong Patriotic Committee, not knowing about their wedding of course, had organised a welcome home banquet for our boys at Seaview Hotel. And another committee had organised a welcome home dance for later at the Soldiers' Hall, which is now Woopi Diggers. Al felt he couldn't let down these wonderful people, so he and Fran attended both, all the time wishing they were back in the wedding suite at the CV Hotel. And all the time with the dark cloud hanging over everyone that in a few days' time the boys would be back at war. Alf served in the Middle East at Bardia and Tobruk, then Greece, Egypt and Syria. With Japan entering the war, they were shipped home to join the war in New Guinea and take part in the Kokoda campaign. During his time in the army, Alf kept a series of diaries, and 20 years ago, Fran and her younger son Stephen had these published into a book called Alf's War. And that's the book, Alf's War. Alf's War gives a true and intimate picture of war as it affected the diggers on the ground. Tragically, he was killed in a work accident in Grafton 20 years after the war. His younger son was only 3 years old. That, I don't know if anyone has read that book. That is a marvellous book. Alf didn't write about the horrors of war so much as the way it affected him and his mates and things went on. And it's got wonderful stories about Woolgoolga and their wedding, the way Fran had some cream lace that everyone had a glory box in those days, and a silk nightie. Well, the silk nightie was worn as a wedding dress with the quickly cream thing made up over it. Yeah, so if anyone would, I've checked the library, they used to have a copy of it there, but they no longer have it, I'm not sure what happened, but if anyone would like to borrow that, I'd be very happy to lend it to them. It's the best war chronicle that I've read, so thank you.